My name is Keya Rice, and my mother and I have lived in a public housing development managed by the New York City Housing Authority for the past 9 years of our life. Watching my mother go to work every day as a food service worker in an elementary school has taught me about endurance. Even when living here has cast storm clouds on our happiest days, my mother and I have found solace in each other. With developments across the 5 boroughs and 600,000 tenants, NYCHA's buildings line the New York City skyline like towers, making some of the most robust cities like Miami, Florida, or Newark, New Jersey, look like a handful of small children in comparison. I was once happy to move here, knowing that the security and affordability would provide comfort, but the appalling conditions I've experienced have taught me that it takes a special strength to be a NYCHA tenant.
Every morning I wake up, and when I turn on the hot water, it's like a panic. Am I going to be able to take a shower? Are we going to have hot water today? I shouldn't go through this. There shouldn't be frustration and fear every single damn morning.
Lakeisha Taylor lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And just like me, she's a NYCHA resident. Meeting Lakeisha and hearing the conviction in her voice when she spoke at protests compelled me to dig deeper and learn more about what was going on in my own neighborhood and community. I began holding up a magnifying glass to NYCHA and seeking answers.
I've been living here for, I believe, 46, 47 years. I was born in 1973. I came here straight from Metropolitan Hospital, which is on 97th Street, as a cute little baby girl. When my family moved here, they moved onto the 12th floor, and then a little while after that, we came and we got this apartment because it was bigger, and we've lived here all my life. We cannot take a shower, we cannot take a bath. It takes like almost 30 minutes for the tub to fill up. And I would go every month to the manager, and I was like, I don't understand why the pressure is not coming up. It would never get fixed.
Lakeisha Taylor lives at the Holmes Towers in Yorkville, and she is one frustrated mom.
It's ridiculous. NYCHA's doing what NYCHA does best and not giving us hot water no matter how much we complain.
She says every day she doesn't know when she can bathe her children.
Sometimes I like taking cold showers, but sometimes I don't. When it's like really, really cold, I don't like it.
Here's the hot water. Here we go. Absolutely nothing but air.
And her kitchen, too.
All the way, nothing's coming to the left. You can see that now to the right, which is cold. Ice cold water.
She showed us the dozens of ticket numbers she's filed over months.
The manager said, oh, well, I hope you get hot water this weekend.
The manager says, I hope that you're what?
It is about close to 10 p.m. right now. I have on this sweater and a blanket because it's literally freezing in here. It's not like it's just our apartment, you know. It's something that's systematic, so it's harder for them to fix something like that. And then sometimes they'll say things like, oh, the heat can't reach that high, or it's going to take some time to get up there because we do live on the 15th floor. In a 16th floor building, and that's my neighbor making noise. The walls are super thin in here, so like whenever my neighbors are having an argument, we have to hear it. But this heat issue is like, it's really ridiculous. And I think people hear, oh, there's no heat, or there's too much heat, or, you know, they hear that and it's like, okay, oh well. But it's different when you have to live someplace and your back is cold and your knees are aching and you can't function because it's so cold in your apartment. I wouldn't wish this situation on someone, but I'm happy to have roof over my head. My mother always stressed the importance of education, and it has been a beacon of light in our lives. As a graduate student at the Columbia Journalism School and an emerging journalist, I am watching my childhood dreams unfold before my very eyes. I am getting to share my story and the story of those around me. Stories of people like Keya, a single mother and NYCHA resident who is proof that superheroes don't just exist in movies. Keya is demanding justice and accountability for her community, and she doesn't plan to stop until NYCHA makes changes.
These elevators that we have here, they were a problem since they put them in. When the elevators were being put in, I was working in the Bronx at the time as a head teacher. I remember having to call in several times, like, I'm gonna be late. I can't come in. I couldn't get a babysitter to come and watch my kids because who's gonna walk up 25 flights? And it's not one day, it's not 2 days, it's like 3 days out of a whole week.
With a population of 46% Black and 44% Hispanic, it's impossible to think that race has nothing to do with the inhumane conditions we're currently living in. Broken elevators and lack of hot water are amongst the greatest issues, to say the least, as grimy staircases and urine and feces are ignored and buildings aren't regularly cleaned. And as a tenant and journalist, I'm trying to piece together what all of this means.
Fund NYCHA now! Fund NYCHA now! Fund NYCHA now! Fund NYCHA now!
I am one of the co-founders of the Holmes Isaac Coalition. We founded this organization because we were fed up with the treatment of tenants. So we decided that we were going to advocate for all the tenants in NYCHA as well as our development.
I made them put a pump in the walls to get better pressure. Fighting for my bathroom was the first step. That was just like my baby step.
Residents become conditioned to believe that this is what they deserve for living in public housing. I don't deserve this.
See, I should not walk by the staircase and have it smell and reek of urine. We are not bums in the street. We do not choose to live this way. And the lies the federal government tells us that there is no money. My parents have lived here since like 1964. They've paid their rent. But again, it was meant to fail. It was meant to crumble. If you really look at it.
A lady writes, my husband is a pushcart peddler. We have 5 children. We are living in an old tenement house. No hot water, no heat. The plumbing is bad. It is unhealthy. What are you going to do about housing? I expect to do a great deal about housing. I shall seek to obtain federal funds for slum clearance and the erection of modern, cheerful apartment houses. Houses with a window in every room and a bit of sunshine in every window, to be rented at low rates within the means of small wage earners.
If you look at the history of public housing, the federal government decided that they were going to allow Black people to move in, minorities to move in little by little. But as soon as minorities started to move in, that's the same time that they started to stop investing in it, stop putting money in it.
You know, NYCHA is 90% Black and brown communities. And a lot of people don't know this, but public housing primarily, when it was first built here in New York City, served the white community. Over the years, you've constantly seen a lack of federal funding, a lack of state funding, a lack of city funding, while the infrastructure continues to just fall apart. You do not see funding coming from the federal level. The capital repairs is at $40 billion. The housing budget is, housing and homeless services is only $2 billion as compared to the $6 billion of the NYPD. Our budgets are a moral document, right? It tells us what our priorities are based on our values. Policing our people is more important to the city than it is to house our people.
I am a proud, let me say that again. I am a proud mother of 2 young boys. I am growing young men. So there's no shame in the fact that I am standing here telling you I live in NYCHA. I am raising my sons. I am proud of what I am doing, and we are fighters. The people who should be ashamed are NYCHA. They should be lining up here begging us to forgive them for what they have done over the years. NYCHA has produced many great people, and I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm talking about those mothers who put firefighters and policemen on the streets. I'm talking about the mothers and fathers who put nurses through college. I'm talking about those parents who work 2 and 3 jobs just to pay that rent. So those are the parents that I am talking about.
People think they know NYCHA tenants. They think they know us as lazy, poor, and on welfare. In this case, the truth is that where we live isn't a reflection of who we are. It's more of an example of what happens when society sees you as less than. These buildings are filled with apartments full of hardworking people just trying to get by. I know this because every day I see it for myself.
God will survive.
As a human race, we went through an unexpected hardship that altered things as we knew it. I was ready to make a film that I thought would be about uninhabitable NYCHA apartments in disrepair. And then, the coronavirus happened. Social distancing guidelines were put into place, and wearing masks every day became as normal as having skin on one's body. There was a time when being home all day was a dream. I used to say if only I had time to do nothing, then maybe I would be satisfied. But knowing life when you finally get what you want is never what you imagine. Who would have thought that pajamas and headscarves would be my new fashion, and that waking up to sleep and sleeping to wake up would be my new passion? My hands feel like paper, scratchy and dry. I've washed them so much I can feel the dryness on the inside. I am in this 15th floor apartment alone every day. Mom is off to work, so I alternate between watching TV, being productive, and taking time to pray. To pray for her safe return and the healing of the land as microscopic particles of the virus leak from person to person like grains of sand. Corona, we've had enough.
I mean, we already know that Black and brown people are the ones that are most deeply affected by any single crisis. I mean, we're deeply affected on a regular basis, so just imagine when it comes to a public health crisis, right? We already know that, Black pregnant mothers are more likely to die in the hospitals. We already know that Black people are more likely to die because due to the lack of health care. Right? We already know these things. And now you throw in a global pandemic into the mix. The reality is the people who have been most affected by COVID-19 has been Black and brown people, specifically within NYCHA.
My thoughts on living in NYCHA during the pandemic are that there's no real difference. NYCHA was not taking care of us before the pandemic, and they sure were late to take care of us after. There's no difference. We are the forgotten people because of our skin. Just like what's going on in the world, the same thing is going on here in NYCHA.
So when COVID hit, now the fact that there was no repairs being done, the fact that no cleaning was being administered within these buildings on any reasonable level, these things are now amplified during COVID-19. and is putting more and more black and brown people in jeopardy of losing their lives because they're not cleaning the elevators, they're not cleaning the hallways. I remember Cuomo in the beginning just decided to drop buckets of hand sanitizer in public housing, and no one knew what to do with them because there were huge buckets of hand sanitizer. And how are you going to administer that in a safe way to the rest of the tenants?
So today is May 15th, and New York State shut down like the beginning of March. So NYCHA literally just sent this a few days ago to residents. 2 masks. 2 pairs of gloves. So there's 2 people in our household, so I guess 1 mask, 1 pair of gloves for me and my mother. Last night she wanted me to come into her room to like play cards with her, and I just like keep telling her like it spreads from close contact. Like, I love you, but we can't be on top of each other like this.
Because people disappoint. They fail you.
That's impossible. Because you felt abandoned by your father.
Say woo! Woohoo! 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 Good job! Say good job!
Good job!
Good job! And then that, guys, look! Oh, it just shrinks.
I don't know if he understands like the death toll of it, but he understands like the sickness part of it. You ready? Big M.
Big M.
Little M.
Little M.
Of course, now this morning, there's no hot water. So I had to do
We don't have.
remote learning, still in my pajamas. And I have a 10 o'clock Zoom, and I still haven't washed my behind. So joyful for me. You have one right away.
And 38.
And
How do you socially distance in an apartment? After spending weeks in our room apart from each other, trying to protect ourselves from potential exposure, my mother and I didn't want to be alone anymore. As an essential worker going out every day, she was putting us at a greater risk. But this night, we chose fun over fear.
What's gonna get you? Second, first, uno, dos.
Y'all try to act like y'all didn't know. What are you doing? How did you get there?
Huh? I don't care. I'm just playing. I reversed it.
How did you get down to?
What do you mean? How did I get down?
How did you get down to 2 cards?
That's how fast you.
No,
Kia, you the one had to
no
pick
way.
out now.
I hope the camera caught the cheating.
Ain't nobody cheating here.
No peace! No peace! Police! No peace!
Just when we thought the coronavirus pandemic would be the worst news of 2020, there was a death that caused so much unrest and outrage around the world.
When George Floyd was murdered, that was the biggest call for people to actually become activists and start to fight. You see on television, so many people have died at the hands of the police. But at that moment, you could see both sides. You saw George and you saw the police officers. And it just called so many people, and I think so many white people finally saw the eyes of the police that just did not care.
Like, I didn't even want to see the video at first. Not because I don't care, but because I do care. And I just knew that if I saw the video, that the images would just haunt me. And I'm the type of person who hates seeing things that they can't fix. And when I first found out about the situation, I was angry and I was upset. And, I didn't cry about it. But like now that I'm sitting here and I'm filling out petitions online and just like reading things, and it just bothers me, like the type of country that we live in that has no respect for the people that are in it. We say that it's justice, but it's evil. Honestly, it's hatred that people have had for Black people for, man, hundreds of years. And, we're not upset just about George Floyd. We're upset because this is something that has been going on for the longest time.
I vividly, to this day, remember the first time I was called the N-word. And I was like, what, 13 years old? My mother sent me to the supermarket and I walked past this little old lady. My mother taught me, raised me to be respectful. Step to the side for this little old lady. Nigga, what? Who? Again, like I looked around like, who you talking to? I walked around like, who's this little old lady speaking to? Is she speaking to me? Me, all of 12, all of 13? You're going to say this to me, a child?
As a mother raising two sons, I fear for my sons. I raise my sons to be respectable. But if a cop, who they are supposed to trust, can stand, kneel on a man's neck for 9 minutes, I stood here for 9 seconds and said nothing. He stood there for 9 minutes on someone's neck until he died.
I dream of a world where everyone would just be seen as a human race, where my brown skin and my struggles would be just as valuable as anyone else's, where I don't have to be perceived as a threat for being myself, where I don't have to look over my shoulder when police pass by. That world is ideal. But in reality, my Black brothers and sisters are dropping like flies as bullets pierce their skin and blood shed as we watch another one die and our community cries. Just the other day, a Black man was on video, a knee in his neck telling white officers he couldn't breathe. A type of crime that was so inhumane and heinous you had to see to believe, and once you saw it, it struck every fiber of your being and caused you to grieve. The reason we say Black Lives Matter must be received.
So when we talk about Black Lives Matter, right, we need to talk about public housing and how public housing matters, because public housing is what secures homes for our people, right? And that's why it's important that it's fully funded, that NYCHA tenants have autonomy over their living conditions, and not some bureaucrats in NYCHA who have no sense of investment in public housing because they don't live there. We have to recognize that you can't reform a system that was fundamentally built to do what it's doing. People think, oh, the police aren't doing their jobs. They're not protecting and serving. But I argue that they are doing their jobs. They are protecting and they are serving. But the question is who are they protecting and who are they serving?
There's this sign that someone put up. She said, when George Floyd cried out for his mother. He cried out for all, that was a cry for all mothers. That hit my soul. It hit my soul because you feel for these women. You feel for these mothers. And as a Black woman raising sons, you know how Black men are targeted. And this is what I want to instill in my children, the strength to see racism, to know racism, to understand that it is not okay, to understand that they don't have to allow it to affect them, to understand that they have the strength in them to say, I'm not accepting it, to understand that they can protest with me and without me, to hope and pray that if it affects them in school, if it affects them walking down the street, that they have the power like I did when I was 12 or 13 and I came home and I told my mother, and my mother was like, yeah, no, don't worry about her. God don't like ugly. It's a shock. It's a shock to your system. And it is okay to say I am Black. It is okay to say you are white. It is okay to say you are Hispanic, because everyone should be proud of who they are. There is no shame in my brownness. But I will not allow you or anyone to step on me or who I am.
When I think of what it means to be a tenant of the New York City Housing Authority, I think of one word, and that is resilient. You have to be able to come back from living in horrific conditions and being treated like a second-class citizen. You have to come back from unfair and untrue labels that people put on you because they will never understand your struggle. And you have to live with the history that surrounds a culture rigged against your success and set up to enable your failures. But even through all this, sandwiched in between racial unrest and a global pandemic, NYCHA tenants are the face of what it means to come out on top. Because this is a community of people who haven't given up and won't. Tenants like Lakeisha are what make our voice matter and pave hope for changes in the generation to come.